All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're talking about the ultimate source of power in Nigeria, the Constitution. And we're going to start with a question that really gets to the heart of how any society works. Just think about that for a second. A president, a police chief, a really powerful business leader. Is there ever a point where their authority just stops? A line in the sand that they absolutely cannot cross? It's a question that every single society has to answer. And here in Nigeria, that answer isn't just left up to chance or somebody's opinion. Nope, it is written down, clearly and firmly, in the country's most important document. And that one simple word, no, is really the foundation for everything else we're about to talk about.
So what is this powerful document? Well, it's the Constitution, of course. But the best way to get your head around it isn't to think of some dusty old legal book on a shelf. It's much, much more fundamental than that.
Here's a great way to think about it. All the other laws, the ones passed by parliament or the regulations from a government ministry, those are like house rules. Important, sure, but the Constitution, that's the master blueprint. It doesn't just set the rules, it sets the rules for how every other rule can even be made in the first place. Okay, so this rule book has some massive jobs to do. First off, it literally builds the government. It creates things like the presidency, the courts, and the National Assembly. But then, and this is so crucial, it immediately puts limits on that same government. It also protects the rights of everyday citizens. And finally, it organizes how power is shared between the federal, state, and local levels. It's the entire instruction manual for the whole system. Now, if this entire rulebook has one single, unbreakable, golden rule, this is it. This is the big idea that makes the whole thing work. And it put it right there at the very beginning so you can't miss it. You've got to love the language here. It doesn't say the Constitution should be supreme, or it would be nice if it had binding force. No, it says it is supreme, and its rules shall be binding. That's not a suggestion, my friend. That's a command. And notice who it applies to. All authorities, that's the government, and all persons. That's you, me, everybody else. Nobody gets a pass. So what does this big word supremacy actually mean in the real world? It's actually pretty simple. The Constitution is the ultimate boss. If any other law, any other rule, or any order from anyone tries to contradict it, the Constitution wins every single time. End of story. So here's how that plays out. First, like we said, it ties the hands of everyone. No one is above it. Second, it acts like a firewall against illegal power grabs. Government can't just invent new powers for itself. And third, it's the ultimate referee. When two laws clash, the Constitution steps in and decides which one is invalid. This whole idea forces a society to make a really fundamental choice. Do you want to live in a country that's governed by consistent, predictable rules, or one that's run by the whims of whoever happens to be in power? And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the rule of law. That's the Constitution's way. You've got known rules, fair procedures, and everybody is held accountable. But on the right, you have the rule by men. That's a world where raw power decides what's right, where who you know is more important than what your rights are, and where force can just replace process. Nigeria's constitution makes a very clear choice. It's the path on the left. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, but what does it actually mean for you, let's say on a random Tuesday afternoon? Let's walk through a couple of real-life scenarios. So imagine this. You're stopped on the street. A police officer says they have to detain you, not because you've done anything wrong, but just because their superior gave them an order. It's a scary moment, right? It feels like you've got no power, no choice in the matter. So in that really stressful moment, does this big, sometimes abstract document actually matter? Does the Constitution really have anything to say about a direct order given on the street? The answer is a huge, resounding yes. That police officer counts as an authority, which means they are bound by the Constitution. An order from their boss isn't some magic wand they can wave to make your constitutional rights disappear, like your right not to be detained without a reason. Because that order conflicts with the Supreme Rulebook, the order itself is unlawful. All right, let's take another one. This time, it's about two laws clashing. Imagine a state government passes a new law, but part of that law is clearly discriminatory. It says only people from one religion can have certain jobs, which goes directly against the right to freedom from discrimination that's guaranteed in the Constitution. So what happens in this legal showdown? Well, we know the Constitution always wins. But here's the really interesting part.
it doesn't just nuke the entire state law. It only voids it to the extent of the inconsistency. What that means is the single discriminatory part gets struck down, it's legally erased. But the rest of the law, if it's okay, can stay.
So, after all that, what is the big takeaway here? What does this all mean? Well, it means the Constitution isn't just some high-level document for politicians to argue about. It's actually something deeply personal.
I think this is the biggest myth out there. This idea that the Constitution is some super complicated text that's only for judges and lawyers in wigs to debate in a courtroom, that it's basically someone else's business. And that could not be more wrong. Remember Section 1? It binds all persons and authorities. That includes you. Simply knowing that the supreme rulebook exists and understanding its most basic ideas is the first and most important step to being able to hold power accountable. And really, that's the best way to see it. The Constitution isn't a sword for the government to use against you. It's a shield for you, the citizen, to hold up. It is the ultimate guarantee that there are rules that everyone, no matter how rich or powerful they are, has to play by. So, we'll leave you with this to think about. Now that you know that nobody's power is unlimited, and that there's a supreme set of rules designed to protect you, how does that change the way you see the world around you?